commitment to musicians. One of our main goals here is to replace musician rehearsal and in studio recording space in the Brighton community. We're going to discuss what we see as really wonderful opportunities, not only to create music and art space, but also to create affordable homes here in Brighton. We're going to clarify the roles of the few city agencies that are involved, the Boston Housing Authority, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. We're going to talk about the roles of community members, musicians, artists, also Faneuil Gardens residents, folks who live in the public housing community that immediately abuts 290 North Beacon, and of course, members of the broader community as well. And but before we break tonight, we are going to outline what we think is a realistic roadmap toward developing and articulating a shared vision for what physical transformation of 290 North Beacon will look like. So I want to, at this point, introduce the Boston Housing Authority's administrator, Kenzie Bach, who will say a few words and also introduce a few other key team members. So, Kenzie, please take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe. And thank you to everybody for joining us. BHA is really excited about this partnership. I am a big believer in the use of public land for public good. So was really excited when all of the advocacy from the arts community and Arts Day here and everybody around, what is a really tough loss of studio space elsewhere in the neighborhood resulted in this parcel being offered to the city. And it's very meaningful for us at BHA because it's immediately adjacent, as you're going to see in the presentation, to Faneuil Gardens, a large family state public housing site of ours. So I just want to welcome both all the artists who are on and folks who live at Faneuil Gardens, where we're in the process, sort of far along in the planning and getting into the development part of a redevelopment. So you're going to hear a lot from the team, but really what we're excited about is the opportunity to deliver on the city's commitment around replacing these music studios at this site, and also having a housing component and thinking about how the whole site can kind of knit back together what's currently a super block and really have a kind of community context that everybody from all walks of life gets to enjoy. So we're really excited. The BHA, we more than kind of a lot of city departments, do a lot of development, like things that have to do with real estate and land. And so in a lot of ways, we have the toolkit for that part of this, that sort of aspect of this project. But we're very much taking direction every step of the way from MOAC on who are really like leading with the music vision here. So just want to thank all of our partners and everybody on the call, and I'll be on for the duration. So I know there'll be like lots of questions and discussion later, and looking forward to hearing from you all. And I'll just
Kenzie,
pass.
thank
Are you going to give it? Am I passing it, Joe, or are you passing it?
Yeah, yeah. The next person we want to pass it to is Joseph Henry from the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. Yeah, thanks, Kenzie.
Hi, thank you for that, and thank you for passing it over to me, Joe. Yes, I'm Joseph Henry, the new Director of Cultural Planning for the City of Boston. I currently am sitting in Alston area, installing a sound system that I built for a performance tomorrow. So I'm very steeped into music, culture as much as possible. And in the UK, I'm also a trustee of a music charity where we have a talent house and we work to support young people to get a foothold in the music industry. So from talent development, but also from, teaching people how to be A&Rs, teaching people how to do music engineering. So I've had a big, long interest in music as a tool for transformation, economically and socially in cities. And I come here from a career in London, where I work for the Mayor of London, and we pioneer some innovative live work artist housing. And you'll see an example of that in the presentation. So I'm very much looking forward to meeting everyone on this call in real life. I recognize some names here, but I'm still new to the city, so I'm getting used to meeting people. I'll put my email in the chat. So if people do want to reach out to me, you'll have a direct way to contact me. And I'll pass it back to Joe.
Yeah, Joseph, thank you very much. Gonna also call on Daniel Lander is here.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Joe. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Lander. I'm a senior policy advisor in the mayor's office. And I'm here because I've had the privilege of working really closely with the mayor's office of arts and culture, Joseph for a little bit, with Cara and Kenny on challenges that have been faced by a lot of folks on this call and musicians across the city in terms of the loss of studio recording space. I just am here to sort of reiterate, our paramount goal with this project is how do we deliver a replacement for lost studio space in Allston at 55, right, at the former location of the Sound Museum as quickly as possible. And we're excited about this partnership with BHA as the sort of developer to bring that back as quickly as possible. We think that's the best way to bring it back to the neighborhood. So really, really appreciative of everyone's sort of willingness to engage in this process and make sure we deliver it. And just want to also shout out the folks who have been working with MOAC and with the city to make sure we keep spaces like 5-5, Morrissey, places like the Charlestown Recording Studios open for musicians to practice in Boston. And, this can't be the end of the road. We want to keep growing space for music and cultural production in Boston, but we're really excited about this really innovative, exciting opportunity in Boston that we can't really think of an example quite like it in the US. It's a little bit of a leap of faith, but we thank you all for sort of joining in this process. And I want to just call out some really key stakeholders that we're thinking about at every step of this process. So first and foremost, it's musicians as well as the broader cultural community, knowing how much displacement there's been both in Allston Brighton, but in the city writ large, and how many folks have, both had practiced and had played and recorded at the Sound Museum, or at other locations around the city, and how important it is that we secure this victory for the music community to come back. In addition, this site, this opportunity is right next to Faneuil Gardens. And so to Faneuil Gardens residents who are on the call, you are really, really top of mind for us. We think there's some tremendous opportunities to add sort of new value, new activation, and better connection to the broader Allston Brighton neighborhood for you. And we want to make sure we're hearing your comments and feedback on this project throughout. And then finally, I want to call out in particular Art Stays Here Coalition and other arts advocates and music advocates who have really been accountability partners for the city to say how important it is that we keep this project moving, that we deliver on sort of the promise of returning recording space and sort of cultural production space back to Allston. So I'm gonna stop talking now, but just wanted to sort of raise all that up as things that are, every time we meet on this project, every day we work on it, all of you as stakeholders are really important to us to make sure you're bought in, that you're understanding what's going on, and we continue to hear from you throughout the process.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'm about to introduce a couple more BHA colleagues to who will be taking on different parts of this presentation. But just to let you know what we're hoping to cover specifically, we are going to recap where we have been collectively with this process. We're then going to talk about where things stand right now. Where are we right now? And then we'll talk about what's next. So I'll first ask Taylor Kane, who is BHA's Chief of Staff, to begin the presentation. And Taylor will then hand things off to Rahul Ramesh, who's a project manager here at BHA. And then they'll return it back to me. And then at the end, we'll have some question and answer time. So Taylor, please.
Great. Thank you, Joe. As Joe mentioned, my name is Taylor Kane, and I am Chief of Staff over at the Boston Housing Authority. It's really nice to see so many faces and names of folks who were at our meeting earlier this year in the summertime to talk about this really important project. We know that there are a lot of folks on this call who are intimately familiar with the background of 290 North Beacon, but we just wanted to take a few minutes to get everyone up to speed on this site's history, and then really talk about where we see this group going forward. So as most folks on the call may know, the 290 North Beacon Street parcel is a community benefit following the redevelopment Article 80 process for 155 North Beacon Street, which was home to rehearsal studio space for musicians. The city's planning department and many folks in this virtual space and beyond worked really hard to ensure that a replacement location was identified to create affordable rehearsal space for displaced artists as part of the outcome of the redevelopment of 155 Beacon. And the 290 North Beacon Street site is ideal for a number of reasons. Its proximity to the 155 site, its proximity to Faneuil Gardens, which we'll talk a bit more about later in the presentation, but that's undergoing its own redevelopment process to bring new high quality, affordable housing and community space to the neighborhood. So we're really excited about this project as a way to really anchor rehearsal space and space for musicians and artists in this particular neighborhood. And I do want to highlight that the BHA, as the adjacent public property owner, as an institution that has a track record of doing mixed use development, we were brought into the planning process around transforming the site because we are really well positioned to deliver new affordable rehearsal space and really leveraging housing funding sources to turn this project into a reality. We also wanted to take some time to give a bit of a recap of some of the really helpful feedback that we've heard to date. And we do really want to think about this list as a living document where we'll continue to hear feedback from community members and really incorporate that feedback as we think about the plans for this site. So to date, we have really heard loud and clear that community members want a clear commitment to recreate musician studio space that was lost because of that 155 North Beacon Street redevelopment. And we will continue to reiterate that and really lead with that as part of this process. We have also heard that as we think about this space, we need to ensure that musicians are able to practice 24/7, that they have 24/7 access to the building for drop off and loading, and that musicians are involved in the planning process in a really meaningful way. And again, this is a living document, so really excited to kind of continue to build what we've heard from community members to date and incorporate that as we move forward. In terms of where we are currently in the process, we are in this pre-development phase. So right now, the City of Boston is wrapping up its due diligence investigation in preparation of taking ownership of the 290 North Beacon Street site. The BHA, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, will lead the redevelopment of the site in collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. And right now, BHA is preparing a request for proposals for a co-developer who will help us move through this project from planning to design to actual construction and occupancy. And at the same time, MOAC is currently working on an RFP for an operator consultant for the rehearsal spaces to really bring that lens of how we're thinking about the musician space and it's co-locating these different uses together as we think about the design for this project. And in the new year, we plan to start regular planning workshops with community members to really build together a shared vision of what could take place at this site. So I'm going to hand it over to Rahul, who's going to talk a bit about why we're thinking about music, arts, and housing together.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Rahul Ramesh. I'm a project manager at the Boston Housing Authority. And, one question that I think residents, community advocates have really talked to us about was, why these uses together? So why music, arts, and housing? And I think the kind of answer that we are the pushing for is that this can really create dynamic, vibrant, and productive spaces for everyone involved. And Taylor, if you don't mind going to the next slide. All these uses can add to each other and create new spaces for everyone. And in addition, it really adds to the financial feasibility of a project to add housing along with the music, arts, and other spaces. So those are the kind of, top level reasons, but we're also inspired by just the kinds of development and the kinds of priorities that we are seeing around in the city and abroad. Um, so Nubian Ascends is a project in Nubian Square in Boston that really combines this housing, arts, commercial spaces, and that's in the planning phase right now. We know that the city of Boston is really prioritizing art spaces. So, and I know that many on this call have really worked in this campaign for the Humphrey Street Studios to keep them and preserve our studio spaces there. And it's really exciting that also Humphrey Street Studios has housing, affordable home ownership adjacent to that site. So we understand that, the city of Boston really cares about this. We want to, add to that environment. And then, as Joseph kind of mentioned before, this example from London, House for Artists, is also inspiring because it's really social housing and artist studio spaces working and co-housing in one site, which is really like what 290 North Beacon could be and what we're really looking for, like toward. And I think just to go to kind of specifically the Alston Brighton context, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So for the Alston Brighton, neighborhood context, we understand that affordable housing is a serious concern for a lot of residents. This is from the Alston Brighton Needs Assessment in 2024. So 53% of Alston Brighton respondents identified affordable housing as a serious concern, and 44% responded that there were no options for affordable housing in their neighborhood. And I've lived in Alston Brighton for a long time, and I can speak to this as well. And then to kind of touch on the other aspects of this development. So what we're really looking for is to try to make units for families and larger households. So to kind of like walk you through this chart a little is, starting from 2012 to 2021, we've seen a real increase, so 55% increase in studio apartments, and a decrease in, one bedroom and two bedrooms. So the gray line and the orange line, decrease of those kind of unit types, and a modest increase of, three bedrooms. But from my perspective, that's a lot of student housing normally. So I know Alston has seen a lot of development activity, but it's been studios and for students. So we really want to bring families and, low-income folks to that conversation. Yeah. And just to touch on the existing conditions of 290 North Beacon, the picture on the left is really from a top-down bird's eye view of 290 North Beacon. So if you look, this street right here is Goodenough Street, and it's intersected with Electric Ave. And then there's North Beacon Street to the right, and this photo to the left. And right below this site, you can actually see the Faneuil Gardens public housing development, which are those brick buildings. And 290 North Beacon is really a single-story commercial and industrial building. So the pictures on the right is what you will see if you go there right now, if you stand on the street. And it's half vacant, and there are some industrial uses. So we really want to reimagine what this site could be. And I'll give it back to Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. So what's next? So we see a pathway forward that we want to lay out for folks and begin a conversation and dialogue about how to best proceed. So next slide, please. The Boston Housing Authority and the City of Boston are truly committed to the concept of public development, public ownership. We think that publicly led development for music, cultural space, affordable homes at 290 North Beacon will serve as a model for future projects across the city and elsewhere. And we see that there are multiple benefits from public ownership. BHA's involvement at the site means that the site will always be publicly owned and, importantly, under public control. The BHA and MOAC are committed to community stewardship of assets like music rehearsal space, performance venues, truly affordable, high quality housing, which we'll talk about more in a moment. And we believe that bringing music and arts into residential communities really promotes opportunities for individuals and families living in those communities, and it really promotes a rich quality of life for everyone. Next slide, please. Very briefly about the BHA, I won't make you listen to me read these statements verbatim. These are BHA's vision and mission statements, but I will say that I'll try to slow down and give you a moment to read them yourselves, but I will paraphrase to say that BHA is the largest provider of housing in Boston. We provide truly affordable housing to Bostonians who are low income and in need of stable housing. And it's our mission to not only provide stable, high quality housing, but we want to make sure that that housing serves as really a platform for opportunity for individuals and families and for the entire community, and that our housing communities contribute to the overall vibrancy of the city of Boston. Next slide, please. At BHA, we've been doing redevelopment work for decades now. I think our principles when it comes to redevelopment can be concisely boiled down to perhaps these three bullets. First and foremost, as I said, we want to provide stable housing that is accessible, meaning physically accessible, economically accessible, and truly affordable. There's the economic piece of it. Truly affordable to Boston's most vulnerable families. And when we say truly affordable, we know that our housing is truly affordable because rent is based on income. In public housing, families pay 30% of about 30% after some deductions of their income toward rent. And if you lose your job or if you cut back your hours and your income goes down, then your rent gets adjusted accordingly. So it's truly affordable. When we're doing housing development, we are committed to using the highest of design standards. We prioritize energy efficiency, sustainability, healthy homes concepts. We want, safe, vibrant communities that contribute to the overall neighborhood, vibrancy of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. BHA is involved in multiple redevelopment initiatives across the city. As we speak, we've been doing this for decades now. Just to mention three of kind of the larger and splashier ones. There's a redevelopment underway at the Mildred C. Haley Public Housing Community in Jamaica Plain, which is right near Jackson Square T Station, if you're familiar with that. We've got a mixed income redevelopment at our Bunker Hill public housing site in Charlestown. And we've got a mixed use redevelopment that is nearing completion at our Whittier Street community in Lower Roxbury, right across from Ruggles Station. Next slide, please. We are, to bring things back to Brighton and to the 290 site, we are very excited by a redevelopment effort that is now 2 years in the making, more than that, honestly, but a master development process that BHA has been conducting with our residents at Faneuil Gardens, which has been mentioned already tonight. Faneuil Gardens, and just to orient you to the photos, to the images rather. Perhaps if you look at the image on the right, and you see that sort of dotted red rectangle, that is highlighting the 290 North Beacon site. That's the site we're talking about when we talk about new musician rehearsal and performance space. you can see that it is immediately abutting a residential block, which is Boston Housing Authority's Faneuil Gardens public housing community. If you look over on the left for a moment, this diagram, this sort of image is showing the existing buildings there. You remember when Rahul showed that plan view, you could just make out the side of the brick building. So these buildings, there are 10 of them. They're all three-story walk-up buildings with basements. They look like public housing if you're familiar with the neighborhood or with other public housing sites. They are immediately across the street from McKinney Park. That's that large green space that you see to the lower portion of the diagram. BHA has been working with Faneuil Gardens residents, not just resident leadership, although we have some truly dedicated resident leaders, but honestly, the entire Faneuil Gardens community on creating a master plan vision for redeveloping the site. We looked very closely at the conditions of these buildings. Were built in the late 1940s. They have zero wheelchair accessibility. They have challenges with energy efficiency and just obsolete, worn out mechanical systems. And we came to the conclusion with the community that the best path forward is a redevelopment plan involving demolition and new construction. We plan to do that in phases because we know that the site is just about fully occupied. There are 258 public housing apartments at the site today. Our plan is to demolish those buildings in phases to allow for orderly and supportive relocation. We want to keep as many people on site as possible throughout the process. And our goal is when we're done that we will have built back not only the 258 original apartments, but we're going to add almost 200. I think the number at the moment is 187 or 188 additional apartments, affordable housing apartments at the site. I could go on all night. I better stop, but I just want to let folks know this has been the subject of a very robust community process. In October of this year, the Boston Planning and Development Agency approved the master plan for the redevelopment of Faneuil Gardens, and they also approved the specific plan for phase one, which, if you look over on the right, it's that building that is sort of shaded blue. And it's one of the buildings that is directly abutting the 290 North Beacon site. So next slide, please. So what's next when it comes to 290 North Beacon itself? You know what, Taylor, if you wouldn't mind going back just a moment, there's something else that's worth pointing out. In this image, what I failed to tell you is if you look on the right where you see that red dotted rectangle that is signifying 290 North Beacon, and you can see that arrow, that blue arrow that sort of runs along Electric Avenue and kind of comes into the site. That's important. It's important in terms of access and sort of visual access and that sort of thing. But what you wouldn't know just walking by is that there is a significant water and sewer, it's actually a sewer main that runs right where that arrow is going, runs into the Faneuil Gardens site, across the Faneuil Gardens site, and out the other side. And so the positioning of the new buildings at Faneuil Gardens were constrained. The positions were constrained by this sewer easement and the actual sewer line. And so I'm pointing that out because what we know and what we believe too is that 290 North Beacon, as we think about redeveloping it, it lends itself to being redeveloped in phases, two phases, so that we can respect that sewer line. Okay, now Taylor, if you could go forward in one more. So, where are we starting? What have what do we know we want to do and need to do at 290 North Beacon? We know that we need to replace the full 40,000 square feet of lost studio space. The studios that were lost over at 155 North Beacon. We want to replace them as soon as possible. We want to replace them in phase one. We also want to introduce truly affordable housing. So, BHA as an agency, we have uh, access to subsidized housing resources, capital and operating resources. We want to bring that level of true affordability to housing at the site. And we, of course, it's extremely important to respect the surrounding neighborhood, the context of the neighborhood. We really want to enhance the community. We want to make sure that the redevelopment at 290 North Beacon complements and enhances what we already have underway or at the early stages over at Faneuil Gardens. Next slide, please. So the development process, high level, what we know is coming up. In the new year, early in the new year, first quarter, certainly by the spring, there will be two requests for proposals that are issued. Boston Housing Authority is issuing a request for proposals to identify a co-developer. When I say co-developer, I want to emphasize that, we see ourselves, BHA, as the developer, as the public entity that is going to own and continue to control and to steward this property. But we know that that we need some assistance. We need some capacity when it comes to development, particularly financial capacity. So we plan to hire a co-developer to assist us under the very clear requirement that it will be the BHA and our public partner agencies that remain in the driver's seat when it comes to ownership and control. The second request for proposals that will be issued by the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and that will be the one that was mentioned earlier, I believe, something that is targeting, or we will try to identify rather and hire an operator for this music space, for the rehearsal and performance and recording space. And potentially that same operator will be involved with future arts and culture space that would be built in phase two. But absolutely, we want to get that partner on board early, very early in the process, because we know that the design decisions will rely on the programming decisions that that this operator will be able to best advise us, and the advice of the community, of course. So those two RFPs will be issued early in 2025. Starting in the spring, we intend to have a series of planning workshops. When we are looking for a co-developer, we are looking for somebody, for a team that is as committed to public participatory planning as BHA is. We're looking for a team who has done that sort of work and also can bring to the table the financial wherewithal to think in innovative terms about financial resources that can be brought to bear. So I expect that it will be a many week, several month process. We'll meet regularly with you all, with the broader community, until we can really articulate a vision for what we want to see at 290 North Beacon, and so that we can put together a well enough developed design that we can then file permitting documents. So land use permitting documents. This is the city's Article 80 design review process that I have in mind. And the goal is to submit an Article 80 application next year in 2025. We want to make sure that we've put the planning put that effort in, so that we have a very successful and credible plan that all of us can get behind. And we expect that the Article 80 process will be very smooth thereafter. So that's the number one goal for next year. And once we have Article 80 approval, it's at that point when we can really go to town on having our designers do construction documents. We can secure the financing for it. We can do construction bidding, hire a general contractor, that sort of thing. But that has to wait on a final design. So those are the steps that are directly ahead of us. We encourage, we urge, we hope that all of you will be actively involved in this process in the coming months. Taylor, if you could go to the next slide, just to kind of prime the thinking here as we segue into a question and answer comment period. If to get you all thinking, if these are some of the questions that we felt are ones that we, at this early stage, we want input from you all and from your neighbors and from other community members. Obviously, happy to hear everything and anything that anyone has to say. But if you could give some thought to what do you want to see in a fully transformed 290 North Beacon Street? What's your vision physically? What will it look like? How can music, housing, and other arts and community uses complement each other, and how can they contribute to that vitality that we're trying to preserve and expand in the Allston Brighton neighborhood? And what's your advice? What do we need to be most careful about when it comes to physical planning and in otherwise to planning? So I want to respect that this is just one meeting in an ongoing series. There have been others in the past. I know over the summer, folks have started to give input, as Taylor highlighted earlier. Many of the participants on this call today were part of earlier meetings. I want to begin the Q&A by maybe just throwing out an invitation to the Art Stays Here collaborative. If there's any representative from Art Stays Here who wants to kick us off with comments, please do.
Hi, Joe. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Bennett with Art Stays Here. Some other colleagues, Ethan Dussault and other folks are here tonight. Thanks for holding the meeting and the presentation. Thanks for putting music first. I think that over time, it will become clearer to the music and arts community how this is beneficial, why it makes sense, and that we'll have the ability to build trust between BHA and a music and arts community, which to my knowledge hasn't specifically happened strategically before. So that's exciting. I want to call out a couple of concerns, and the concerns that we have I'm sure will get diluted as we continue moving forward. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Chief Elliot Ortega, who helped steward this partnership between Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and BHA, is no longer at the city. She left 2 weeks ago and is moving to Detroit. However, I think that we're in good hands with Chief Bach and with Joe and some of these folks, and also Daniel Lander, who is directly from the mayor's office to help continue stewarding this. So we have a loss, but we have ways of dealing with it. Second, it would be really great if you could, either at this meeting or at another meeting, or on a project, kind of explain the basics of the memo of understanding between MOAC and the city and BHA regarding this property. And the reason I say that is because, there may be some trepidation in the music community that long term, especially with Chief Elliot Ortega gone, that this will play out as hoped and planned and expected. But we have an MOU that protects that as well. So I think artists and musicians would feel good knowing about that. And I'm glad that there are some musicians here tonight, both who were at the Sound Museum and some other of our partners over at 55 Morrissey and at the newly saved Charlestown Rehearsal Studios. So I look forward to hearing from them too. Thanks.
Amy, thank you very much.
Sure.
I guess I would pause for just a moment to see Kenzie or Daniel, if you have anything you'd like to say about an MOA, or if that's something that we will come back to you, Amy, about with.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm happy to just say, so yes, very much agree, Amy, that losing Cara is a loss. And I feel that way as well. But I really want to affirm like a very, very strong continuing commitment to the vision from myself at BHA, our whole team, but also, from Joe, from the whole MOAC team. And as you said, Daniel is really representing. There's very intense interest in this on the mayor's office side. So I really want to emphasize that, like, and also I have promised Cara that we will invite her back for like every milestone of this project. So Detroit is not that far away. We will, she will be tracking it and we will be inviting her back. So, it's hard when a job like that one comes knocking, for her to say no. So I get that. Yeah, I think it probably makes sense in terms of what Amy's asking for us to, come back with some slides and stuff on the MOA because it is a technical document. But it really is about enshrining exactly what we're talking about, which is the commitment to making sure that we deliver first and foremost this musician space, and that this is not a situation of, oh, the BHA is going to go do its own thing now. Like, it's very, very much like everything is conditioned on continuing in the path that the city's laid out. So happy to do that. I think probably, like I said, makes sense we can do a few slides on that at a future meetings. And Cara signed it on her last day. So it's a very,
Yes.
very newly minted document. Yeah, but very excited about
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. I know there's some hands raised. I want to pause just one more time to recognize that, or to ask if there's any representative from the Faneuil Gardens Task Force or resident leadership or just committed resident who is burning to say anything, and I'd like to kind of hear a Faneuil Gardens voice if there's somebody interested in speaking. Can I ask, Rahul, are folks able to just unmute themselves if that's the case, or?
Yeah, they can unmute themselves, or if it's like or if the interpreters can say if there's any questions in Spanish or Cantonese.
Okay. And so we'll give the interpreters a moment to ask. Again, if there's anyone from, a resident who wants to just speak up, that's fine too. And if not, without a whole lot of further ado, I'm happy to call on folks who have raised their hands. And this is not anyone's only chance, obviously, to speak up. So if I've moved on, please just let me know. Okay, why don't we turn to Ellen? Oh, I'm sorry, Rahul, do you see somebody?
No, you're good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's turn to Ellen McCrave. Ellen, if you could unmute yourself.
Yep.
Good
Hi.
evening.
Hi. I was on the IAG for 155 North Beacon, so I was very interested in continuing to learn more about the project. And I also live right up the street from the site. And I found out about this meeting through a kind of a fluke because I get the BPDA emails, but no idea that this was coming out of MOAC and the BHA. So I would like to see more of an outreach to the rest of the neighborhood about it. I did let some other people who were on the IAG know about it, and there were a lot of people on that IAG who I'm not a musician, but fought hard to advocate for the musicians that were losing space. So we were very we're very interested and wanted to find out more. So if I did sign up for the BHA emails, so I hope I'll continue to get them. But I want to make sure that yes, it abuts Faneuil Gardens, but there are lots of other people who live around it who are interested in what's going on. A lot of people in the neighborhood were very excited to hear about what was going to happen with the building, and interested in finding out. So I'm not sure how the BHA goes about putting out notices, but we do let people in the neighborhood know, and people were most, supportive, very supportive, and very supportive also of the Faneuil Gardens redevelopment. That last meeting, there was not one negative comment made about anything. It was great. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing what happens. I walk down there all the time, so that'll be fun, exciting. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, Ellen, thank you very much. And absolutely, we in the coming weeks and months, we will be sure to have a really robust outreach strategy because always when BHA when we do our development work, we start and end with our residents who live in our public housing communities, and I know we have a very formal way of making sure we reach folks. I know that MOAC has different ways of reaching out, and we'll get better coordinated because we truly want to reach the broader community, musicians and others. Thank you for being here. Look forward to working with you going forward.
Oh, I just want to say also that that whole McKinney Park is being redone too. So there's the Parks Department is involved too. So, the neighborhood's really excited about that too, because that's been pretty rundown place for a while also. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And
no, thank you.
if I can say,
Oh,
Joe, I think a concrete thing that we could do to Ellen's point is I know the BPDA will have an IAG list from that project. So I think like it would be easy for us to just automatically add all the IAG members from that project on and make sure they're getting the updates here.
yeah, absolutely. We will do that. Thanks. I see that Griselda has raised her hand. Griselda?
Yes, good night. My
Good
English is
evening.
a broke, kindly translate, yeah. And I have a question about the community, and I will ask in Spanish, please, okay? Yes, ¿hay alguna política de seguridad para reubicar a algunos residentes que ponen en riesgo y en peligro nuestra paz y seguridad aquí en Fenway Garden? Porque estoy segura que existe un récord de denuncias en las oficinas de Fenway Gardens de personas que viven en estos edificios que consumen drogas y constantemente hacen escándalos, impidiendo dormir a los demás residentes. Y quiero resaltar que esto no se trata de ningún punto de discriminación, sino que se trata más bien de nuestra seguridad. ¿Hay algún plan de reubicación con estas personas? Gracias.
Griselda, thank you. I wonder, Rahul, could we turn off the interpretation so that Daisy can translate the question into English?
Hello.
And Daisy, can you, oh, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. So, hold on.
If you want, I can ask again.
I have, yeah, sorry, I wrote the note once.
Griselda,
Yeah, could
please.
you
I
ask
think
again?
that'd be helpful.
Ok. Daisy, mi inquietud es si hay alguna política de seguridad para reubicar a algunos residentes que ponen en riesgo y en peligro nuestra paz y seguridad aquí en Fenway Gardens, en Bacon Street. Porque estoy segura que existe un récord de denuncias en las oficinas de acá de Fenway Gardens de personas que viven en esos edificios, que consumen drogas y constantemente hacen escándalos, impidiendo dormir a los demás residentes. Y esto nos hace sentir inseguros. Y no se trata de discriminación, se trata de seguridad. Y quiero saber si hay algún plan de solución para esto.
Okay, so she is asking if there's a plan, like a security plan, to relocate residents that um consume drugs, that they're drinking, they don't let others live peacefully. It's not nothing discriminatory, it's just a safety concern. Is there a plan to relocate those people?
So, and Kenzie, I think you look like you might want to speak, but I will just say, with respect to Faneuil Gardens, the Housing Authority is absolutely committed to making sure that current residents of Faneuil Gardens have a right to stay at Faneuil Gardens. If folks need to be relocated to facilitate demolition and new construction, um, then those families will have a right to come back. Now, that's separate from just good property management. Obviously, if there are individuals who are committing crimes, the housing authority and our property management team needs to be on top of lease enforcement and those sorts of things. But for us, when we undertake a redevelopment, I want to be very clear. We don't have any ulterior motives of, having people move away forever. Not at all. We do this redevelopment work for the benefit of first our current existing residents, and then second, for future low-income applicants who are on our very lengthy waiting lists. Um, Kenzie, not to put you on the spot, but I feel like you might have wanted to say something.
Okay, sorry, Joe.
Oh, yes, please, Daisy, if you could.
Totalmente, ya
Thank you.
comprometidos en garantizar que los residentes actuales de Fienio tengan derecho de ser reubicados cuando se facilite la demolición y se haga la nueva construcción. Esas familias tendrán derecho de regresar. Eh, entonces ya si hay individuos que están cometiendo delitos, ahí está la gerencia para poder resolver eso.
Yeah, and Daisy, maybe if I can just add, I mean, the key thing for the BHA is that when like we have a site that's under redevelopment, all of the normal rules still hold in terms of like the leases, right? So if somebody's violating their lease, which is I think what Griselda's talking about, then they can still be subject to action by the BHA up to and including eviction if that is really interrupting the safety and security of other people on the site, and that remains in place always. So but as Joe is saying, it's very important to the BHA on the flip side for folks to understand that like when we do redevelopment, like he said, we're really doing it for the residents who are there. So yes, if somebody's committing lots of lease violations, they may not come back because they lose their lease because of those violations, but it won't be because the BHA is picking and choosing who comes back. So yeah, that's just, and sorry, I know some of the folks on this call are not obviously BHA residents, and so this is all a bit less relevant, but it is an important set of concerns for our residents. So
Ok, la reurbanización sería para todos, pero si hay residentes que están cometiendo infracciones del contrato de arrendamiento, están violando los términos y las políticas, sí están sujetos a un desalojo, aunque estén en proceso de reurbanización. Entonces, esa sería la medida que ellos tomarían acerca de la seguridad.
So, Rahul, does it make sense to go turn the interpretation back on? Or is it best to keep it open?
Thank you.
I
You're
think
welcome.
I can turn it back on, and if there are any questions, just so it's easier, perhaps.
Yeah. While you do that, I do want to say Griselda's question did remind me that security is always front and center. It's a concern of ours when we design new housing, when we design access, transportation access, parking. And we've heard, or we know that when it comes to building studio space, rehearsal, recording space, especially ones that need to be available 24/7, security is going to be of paramount importance. So we'd love to continue to hear from folks about concerns around what do we have to be planning for physically for 290 North Beacon? How can it best relate to the housing and other mixed uses that we are planning for Faneuil Gardens? So I don't want to lose sight of that. And Kenzie, please.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. I was actually I totally agree with all that, and definitely, there's definitely things about new buildings that can help us with, security and access controls and all of that that we don't have in brick walk-ups today. But I actually, if it's okay, I wanted to address a couple of the questions and comments in the chat. So one was Jim Healy had asked about, if there's room for more than one-to-one replacement of the lost music space, why wouldn't there be a plan for a bigger arts development? So I wanted to speak to that. And actually, I wondered, Joe, if you could throw up or maybe it's Taylor, the slide with the dotted line on it. So, and I sort of explained this in the chat, but I think it's helpful to speak to verbally as well. So basically, when we look at the 290 North Beacon site, I think the exciting thing is, can we get this to, yeah, there we go. So I think the exciting thing is that there's space for a lot more square footage across this whole site than the 40,000 that was being replaced from what was lost at 155, which is great news. And we tend to think, just so folks know, like of kind of when we think about like what's the total capacity of a site right now in this economy, we tend to think about like boxes that go up to 70 feet, which is the height that you can do stick-built construction. Because at the moment, the way that steel construction is penciling, it's like if you go to 8 or 9 floors, you're basically like you're totally in trouble financially. And that's not to say that you would go all the way up to 70 feet, right? Everything depends. Like, and there's also like, questions of how much space you leave at a site just for the for open space and all of that jazz. But the point is like when we think about a max capacity of a site right now in a lot of places in the city, we're thinking about, okay, what's the square footage of the parcel? And then how many floors can you go up? And you've definitely got total here. If you were just building one big box, a lot more square footage than the 40,000 square feet that you're trying to replace. Now, however, you have a couple of challenges. One is that like in terms of like integrating into the neighborhood context and all of that, you're not just going to build like one giant box, which is basically what we have today, except it's one story, right? So it cuts off the site and sort of fills most of the surface area of the site. But you like, so there's, there's the kind of like, is this nice for everybody aspect? And obviously where that arrow is right now, reconnecting Electric Ave in a way that then like really allows the Faneuil site to be back into more of a neighborhood street grid is a very attractive thing. But there's also, like Joe mentioned, the sewer easement underneath that's such that basically like over that line where that arrow is, you really can't build a big heavy building. Right now they have a very light touch warehouse thing that isn't putting a lot of weight on that, but water and sewers easements are such that you don't really want to mess around building over that line. But the other thing is that like financing construction is very expensive right now. And if you said to yourself, oh, like I want to get my 40,000 square feet of rehearsal replacement space And then I also want to do like this other, 60,000 square foot use like across the whole site for arts. Like your problem in terms of financing and getting to actually constructing it, even with significant public subsidy, is just going up and up. And so basically, like one of the things that we've heard very loudly from MOAC and from the arts community is like the clock is ticking in terms of wanting to get this studio replacement space. And as Daniel alluded to, because there's a lot of established financing mechanisms for affordable housing, there are real opportunities to kind of like hitch those two wagons together and move. And so, part of what we think makes sense is to put first and foremost the question of how do we get a building that includes the full promised replacement space as quickly as possible, that is also at the high quality and delivers all the the things that we'll hear about in the community process. And then how do you do that and then preserve sort of another half of the site that that you can do another like heavily arts music, right, but mixed use thing on in the future, so that what you're netting out of this site that the community fought so hard for is like actually a real expansion of arts and music capacity in the neighborhood. And from our perspective, also housing in the neighborhood. Like we think that's all awesome, but that's the reason why like if you tried to do that all at once, you're always waiting on the slowest piece of a financing stack. So you could end up in a situation where you're waiting for the grand vision, but the delivery of the 40,000 is getting further and further away. And since you basically have to build on this site in two different massings anyways because of the sewer line, you might as well build one massing first and make sure that in that first one you're delivering on the replacement space. But I agree with the sentiment in the question that should be a baseline starting point, right? And that the goal should be to, deliver as much great use for the community as the site can deliver. And then the one other thing I wanted to note was just on Jen's point. I'll just say that I think that it would be a real win for this site for it to both serve the kind of the very important purpose of that studio rehearsal practice space that we had before with the sound museum, but also I think in the way that Jen's alluding to be a little more forward facing in terms of like being a way that the community learns about the musicianship and what's going on inside. And so I love that reference. And I know, as Joe noted, there's a lot of interest in public art, but I would just say that I think like also when I think about our residents at Faneuil Gardens, like, having everybody know, oh, that's like a building that people are making music in, and that's awesome. And oh, also, by the way, like, maybe you have something on the ground floor that's like opens out into the community space where there's instruments, right, that people get to play, or people see people, maybe people who have a studio in the space are also coming down once a month and playing a little mini concert. I don't know, but I think like we would see that integration as like a huge potential plus for this relationship. So I just wanted to underscore that.
Kenzie, thanks. Joseph, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to just pick up the point about the musician task force. And it just sort of goes back to the rationale for having a RFP for operator consultant running before an operator. And that is so that we can ring fence some budget, more like budget to pay people for their time. I think often in projects I've seen operators come on so early and actually they don't have the ability to sort of be paid for their labor, which is essentially supporting the design and development of a project. And that also then through that mechanism, we can think about how we can bring a whole coalition of people together through that process to feed into the project. There's really a way of platforming end user and operator engagement in a sort of holistic, broad way. And actually just back to House for Artists, it's quite a nice anecdote where as part of the development, we had to remove a street lamp, and to replace it, we got Grayson Perry, the artist, to redesign the street lamp as a piece of public art. One, we got Highways to pay for it, which is always a bonus, and two, it was sort of like designed in a way that it gave a clue to the activities in the building below. So it was designed to be a piece of public art as well as to light the way for people in this public plaza. So I think there's always opportunities in these projects to embed creativity in as many places as we can. So I also agree with that sentiment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joseph. Jesse?
Hi, my name is Jesse Vengrove. I'm a former tenant of the Sound Museum, but before everyone was displaced. I'm currently at the Charlestown Rehearsal Studios, part of the Tenants Association steering committee there. So first off, I just want to say thank you for having this meeting. It's very awesome to see this process continuing forward. A couple comments. I want to echo Ellen's point. I was part of the meeting that happened in July. I'm on a bunch of mailing lists, and I had no idea that this meeting was happening until I heard about it from Amy from Art Stays Here this past Friday. So just again, echoing that point that however this can be broadcast out to the community, one, to get folks involved, but also just to let folks, especially in the musician community, to know that the process is moving forward. It kind of seems to have fallen a bit, into a void. And so to let people know that things are happening is super, super useful and just good to makes everyone feel better that things are going on. So however that happens, I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that there would be more folks here if they had known about the meeting. I'm super happy to see that one of the first slides early on talking about 24/7 access. I think that's super important. The Sound Museum obviously was a space that had that. And most other rehearsal spaces in the area have, if not that, then very close to that, 20-hour a day type access. And that's great. I'm also do want to say that I was very, when the prospect of this being intertwined with housing came up, which was a surprise to me over the summer. I think it's awesome. It's very exciting. I think a lot of times these conversations tend to be like an either or scenario. And the fact that this is happening together is great. It's super exciting as a musician to know that the rehearsal spaces and whatever arts uses that will be there are going to be done purposefully and integrated into whatever's happening at Faneuil Gardens, so that everyone involved is happy and knows what's going on. So kudos on that. I think it's fantastic. One or two more very quick points. I think this will probably be maybe included in the RFP process, but there's a lot of talk about affordable housing. And I think there needs to be talk about affordability of the rehearsal spaces themselves. Just as obviously with housing, it's one thing to have the space available. It's the other thing for people to be able to afford to be in those spaces. So as we've seen just again with housing, as costs and rent has gone up everywhere, rent for rehearsal spaces around the city have gone up, and it's, that piece has to be a very big part of, or will play into how this building will be a success for the musician community. The Sound Museum building, while it was in poor condition and not well managed, it was very affordable, and that was one thing that was very great about that building. So I can't stress that enough, and I think my guess is that will be included somehow in the RFP for operators and consultants. And then my very last point is I'm probably part of the RFP as well, but also just very excited to see how the rehearsal studio space can also be made more accessible to folks at Faneuil Gardens or folks who may not have previously been able to access a space like that. Whether it's, rooms that, like a small subset of rooms that are just stocked with instruments and are available for people for free or whatever it is. But however, and I know Kenzie had mentioned about some, concerts in out in the open spaces, anything like that. But that sort of integration between those two things, I don't think happens ever. And it's also rare that music rehearsal is so close to housing. And it's, again, just I'm rambling on because it's a very exciting prospect, all around. So that's all. Thank you.
No, that's terrific. Thank you, Jesse, very much. Ethan, go ahead.
Thank you, Joe. I kind of just want to combine a couple of the questions and comments and kind of dream, beyond this project, and maybe take the temperature on this idea. As it was mentioned earlier, this was something that was a hard fought battle and victory that was able to secure this piece of land for replacing this art space. And much like Jesse said here, there's excitement around the ability to combine another need in the community with this need, and also to maybe bridge the worlds together, and by providing access to arts infrastructure for people that are in affordable housing situations. Because there's much like housing has a wide range of incomes, arts community has a wide range of incomes, not and another thing is there's a myth that like arts is a luxury. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's a part of our lives through thick and thin. Whether we're having good times and bad, art is always around us and a part of our lives, and it's completely necessary for a fulfilling life. So I was just wondering if we're on the verge of seeing this project happen, and it could be precedent setting and very powerful statement of this mixed use of arts and affordable housing. And I was just wondering if this goes as good as I think it could and will go, do we anticipate moments where maybe there's a community benefit in the future that is affordable housing, but saying, hey, arts is important and we want to add an arts component to this new affordable housing project across town? Because it just seems like, why just do it in Allston? Because there was this thing that existed in Allston. Why don't we do it in all over the city for all the parts of our town? Or and I'm just hoping that folks are excited by that prospect as well. And anyway, I just happy to hear the engagement tonight and from both the city and the community, and look forward to realizing the potential of this.
Ethan, thanks so much. I totally agree. I think if we this could be a model for future things. And I think there are, as we talked about earlier, there are models already that exist, but there just seems to be such a natural quality of life aspect to both the affordable housing and affordable arts. So thank you. Thanks for your excitement. Other questions? I'm not too adept at paying attention to the chat. So if anyone wants to raise up, Emily, please.
Hi, my name's Emily. I also used to rehearse at the Sound Museum, and like Jesse, currently at CRS and also the spare bedroom in my house. I'm also with the Union Square Neighborhood Council, and I just wanted to reiterate what Jesse and a couple other people said, is getting the information out to the local musicians about what's going on, about these meetings, because so many people, they're disillusioned, they're tired, they're, apathetic. It's just like putting their heads down, just assuming that, they're going to lose another space. We're just going to lose another space. And, there's a lot of, lack of trust. So I think it would be great to see more than just an email list. It would be great to see this information advertised in places where musicians are likely to find other things, like music publications like Vonnieland, or places where they trust, like the source. I think that could be like the first, like an easy first step in sort of like bridging that trust, and getting visibility, because yeah, there's a lot of apathy, but people really care and are passionate, and I think they would come out if they believed it was real, so to speak.
Emily, thank you. Joseph, do you want to respond to that or say something else?
No, I think that's a really important point, and actually that's one of the reasons I put my email in. It'd be great to. My accent will probably give away I'm not that local, to to Boston. Although someone asked me if I was from Florida the other day, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, if people would like to email me about this, it's something I'll be really up for speaking to with, and also maybe organizing a meeting with interested parties and our comms team in the city of Boston and MOAC to talk about effective ways that we can utilize their resource to communicate this out. Um, I think from many different perspectives, and also I did take a note down, but it'd be really great to understand where musicians pick up information from and go to where they are, and not expect people to. We have a website, but I don't expect musicians to be regularly checking the MOAC website for updates. And actually, I think we have to be proactive in how we message this out. So please do email me and get in touch, and I will pick that up.
Thank you both. We have just a couple of minutes in our scheduled time. Obviously, more to come. We really are intent on creating a further dialogue and real planning. But if anyone has something that you're burning to say before we close, please raise your hand. Amy, go ahead.
Using my actual hand. Um, just one last thing. It'd be great to at least explain to the people on this call that because you're going to be an IAG or a CAT, ways for folks to potentially participate.
So you're breaking up a little bit, but I believe that your question was to make sure that there will be formal ways to participate, an impact advisory group or other formal. And the answer there is yes, there will be. When I talked earlier about filing for Article 80 approval, that kicks off the formal City of Boston design review process. And so the BPDA will convene an IAG or the appropriate sort of advisory group. So absolutely, that will be part of the process. I think to everyone else's points and sort of the energy I've heard so far, we want to be reaching a broader community, the musician community and others, as early as we can to get real meaningful input in the design decisions. So I don't mean to say we're going to wait and the IAG is happening later and there won't be any communication before then. So we really will take to heart all of the comments that folks have made about outreach. So absolutely, though. Kenzie, please.
Yeah, and I just want to say to that, like, I think to Joe's point, part of what we were trying to lay out is the idea that, starting in the new year, there's going to be a lot of meetings for input on the RFPs themselves. And I think this is actually a project where we want to get that public input long before the IAG, because like the IAG, right, at the BPDA level, then it's called an impact advisory group because the theory of it has to do with, oh, there's private development where the private developers, making money and whatever, and what are the impacts on the community and how do we get some things for the community out of this? This, like, the community benefit is the development. Like, we see it as like the whole point is to provide like a key community resource, right, of this rehearsal space that I'm looking for, it might have been I forget who it was, but as several people said, like actually affordable space, right, for musicians. And similarly, right, we're into like actually affordable housing. So I think like for us, it's not like something where we want to go behind a curtain and design something and then come out and in the BPDA formal Article 80 process hear from the public. Like, this is a public development, so it should be like publicly informed from the get-go. So I just really want to stress that doesn't necessarily, like, it doesn't mean that we're going to convene an IAG in January, because we're not, that's like a term of art from the BPDA world, but like the goal is for that to be very robust, very upstream, and totally, I think, like, really appreciate everybody, saying, hey, we got to get this out through a lot more channels, and we'll make that job one in the new year.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's quite energizing to hear the comments. Thank you for making the time tonight. Please stay tuned, and we will do, a great job, a better job of reaching out to others who weren't able to be here who haven't heard. And in the meantime, happy holidays, safe and happy holiday season to everyone. Thank you very much. Rahul, can you save the chat? Right, you're on that. Okay. Thank you.
It's also recorded, so
Go, that's right.
yeah.
Well, but the like written
Yeah,
chat,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got it.
You're on. All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.